So we're starting by the Mishnah on Nun-Hey Amud Beis. And what's interesting is that the Mishnah itself leads into the story of the Chorban Beis HaMikdash, because the Mishnah starts off that Lehayu Sekrikin B'Yehuda Laharuga Milchama. There's different periods. So what are we talking about over here? What's the story? What's the mice over here? So the Romans held very, very stark against the Jews. Not only did they want to wage war against the Jews, but they were taking revenge, so to speak, from the fact that Yehuda killed Esav. Taisus mentions this, B'Yerushalmi, B'Rishayna, Gozu, Gzera, al Yehuda, Lefisham, Seris, B'Yadam, Me'avaisam, She Yehuda, Horag, Esav. Dichsev, Yadcha Ba'eref Haivecha, by Birkat Yaakov, when Yaakov was benching Yehuda, he told him, Yadcha Ba'eref Haivecha, your hand is at the back of the neck of your enemies. So what does he mean? V'Tanya Nami B'Sefri Yadav Rav Loi, right? Moshe Rabbeinu bench Yehuda Yadav Rav Loi. So what does that mean? So B'Shasha Horag is Esav. It's talking about when he killed Esav. B'Soif Per comes to cite this. Everybody knows famous Kasha. Yeah, Damar Chushan Ben Dan. Chushan Ben Dan knocked off his head, and then Esav was dead, right? Yeah. So who did it? Did Yehuda do it, or did Chushan Ben Dan do it? So Zak Taisus Damar Chushan Ben Dan Shakal Kulful Machi Areshe. He took a pole and whacked him over the head, and he died, right? Actually, it doesn't say that. Machi Areshe hit him over the head. The Esav v'Nasru Einev v'Nafla carried the Yaakov, and his eyes fell out and rolled to the feet of Yaakov by the Maras HaMachpelah. So Shem Eloi Meis Ba'isa Hakah Acha Amar Lav Yehuda V'Harga. Chushan Ben Dan did the most of it, and Yehuda came and finished it off. So the Messiah by the Romans was that, and this was leading into the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash, that the Romans wanted to take very stark revenge on the Jews, and they were out to kill them. But what happened was like this: there was a deal. There's something called a Sekrikin. What is he? He's a guy that's out to kill people. But if you tell him, listen, you got a good piece of real estate, he'll make the trade, and he'll leave you alone, and he'll take your property. So I'm just going to use this a little bit for the time being until, also it's a taich. There's a lot of good words, on Nunvav Amud Aleph, there's a lot of good taich words that we're going to need to know, so we'll keep it over here. So again, during the period of the second Beis HaMikdash, so the Goyim would be, chasing the Jews off the land and, like this. So what's the halacha? So the Mishnah deals with the halacha that applies to the Jew's purchase of land that was stolen by a guy from another yid. Meaning, I'm buying it from the guy, but originally belonged to you. Right? So the Mishnah is just going to talk about what the story was. So the law of Sekrikin was not applied when people were being killed during the war. But after the war, who was fighting this war? So it was Titus. Titus was the one that was leading this battle. Titus, the famous Titus, who we're going to learn about in the next, about Nun Zayin or so. But after they stopped killing people in the Milchama, Yesh ba Sekrikin, so then the halachas of Sekrikin apply even in Yehuda. So what are the halachas? So Ketzad, what's the halachas? Lokach mi Sekrikin, if a Yid bought a piece of land from this guy who took the land away from somebody else. It's actually interesting because they say over here at the bottom of the article, their ha'ara is that what does the word Sekrikin come from? From Rashi, it appears that the word Sekrikin is derived from the expression "sa karka," take land. That's what Rashi says in the beginning of the Mishnah. The Rashi says, "Va'omer loy sa karka zu ba'al tamiseni." Go take this piece of property and don't kill me. And the guy would listen. That's what they would do. They would take the land, because I guess taking the land away from the Jews is just as important. Eretz Yisrael is very important to the Jews also, and they wanted to make a big rush about it. Okay. So lokach mi Sekrikin v'chozav lokach mi balabais. So if a Yid bought land from the Sekrikin, and then he bought it back from the balabais, meaning from the original owner, so mikhay batel, it's not a good mekach. He has to give it back to the original owner. Mi balabais. But if a Yid bought the land from the owner first, v'chozav lokach mi Sekrikin, and then he bought it back from this armed robber, so Mikhay Kayam, it's a good mekach. He does not need to give the land back to the original owner because he bought it off the Yid. If you buy it off the Yid, so then it's okay. Okay, so why is this so? So Rashi. So Mikhay Batal, the Armina Miyira Ovad. He did a Miyira. Right? So that's what it's not a good mekach. Hinami Hasheni Nerechli Rishon Kashem Menu. It's a concept of Bava Metzia and Bava Basra that, that sometimes you wouldn't, it's because you don't really want to handle with the guy. So but technically speaking, it's not a good sale. The Gemara says that we're talking about where they don't have a shtar. So that's going to be another issue. Fine. Now the Mishnah continues with a similar halacha to Sikrikin when the property is owned by the husband and he's using that for the ksuba. So lagach min ish. If somebody bought land from the husband, and then he acquired the shibud on this karka from the wife, so mikhay batal, the mekach is no good. Why? The purchase from the wife is void because she can claim that she's only doing this to make her husband, to please her husband. Right? That's what Rashi says, the Omra Nachas Ruach Asisi Levaili. She says that she's only doing this to make her husband feel good or whatever. So again, Logach Mina Ish, if one bought it from the husband because of Logach Mina Ishos, Mechabatul is no good. Mina Isha, if one bought it originally from the wife, because of Logach Mina Ish, then he bought it from the husband, so then Mechakayam, then it's a good kinyan and it goes through. Now why is that? Because since the wife agreed to sell before her husband did, she can't claim that she gave her consent only to please her husband, because the husband's only the second one in the picture, not the first one. Fine. So Zakti Gemara Zum Mishnah Rishayna. The Mishnah is going back to the halacha of the Sikrikin, and it says that this is the original halacha. That what? That lakach misikrikin because of lakach mibalabais mekhay bot. That's the original halacha. Bezdin shalachrei mamru, but there was a bezdin later on. It was still during the period of the Tanoim that halakach misikrikin, somebody who buys from this person, nice and lebaylim revia, he has to give 1/4 to the original owner, and then keeps the land for himself. Vasfara ma'aseh dos, that he's giving only 1/4. So Zok Rashi sheshia ru de sikrikin ma'zel gabei riva, that when the Sikrikin takes it away, so he's gonna, why is it that in a city, why does real estate very expensive in certain areas? Because there's no crime there, and they protect it, and they it's well kept. But in an area where there's a lot of crime, and it's a very bad area, and it's down in the dumps, so you can't spend, you're not going to be able to spend so much money on it, and housing could be a lot cheaper. So when you're dealing with Sikrikins, the value of the properties are going to be going down because it's so difficult to deal with these people. They're dangerous people, and it's like a crime-ridden neighborhood. You don't want to go there. So therefore, you only give the Bailam a Revia. So if one acquires lands from a Sikrikin, nice and the Bailam Revia, he gives 1/4 to the original owner and may keep the lands for himself. So again, what's the business of this quarter? The Gemara says, since the Shan the Gemara is that 1/4 of the land's value or 1/4 of the payment made to the Sikrikin, which is anyways a lower amount because you're not really, he's not selling it to you for
invested in it.
Yeah. Zicha. So Amosai, what are we talking about? So bisman she'en biyadan likach, when the original owner doesn't have the means to acquire the land himself. Al yesh biyadan likach, but if the original owner does have the means to buy it back, meaning in full price, hen kodmel l'chaladon, he's able to buy it back before everybody else. Look, it's like one of these, he has first rights because it's really his, and it's not like it was a real sale. This was miyura. This because you were afraid that the guy's going to kill you, so you just let him have it. But technically speaking, I never really sold it wholeheartedly. So it's a different story. If the owner has the means to buy his field back from the Sikrikin, no one else may purchase it because he's not a Bailam over here. He's a Sikrikin. He's a not good person. Rebbe Hoishiv Bezdin, Rebbe made a Bezdin, v'nimnu shem shasa b'fnei Sikrikin shnei masar chodesh kol hakodem likach zoiche. That if the land remained by the Sikrikin for 12 months and no one claimed it, then whoever wants could come and it's like it's in foreclosure. If anybody wants, the bank is going to put it up for auction. Anybody who wants could come and take it. But, and here's the knetch, that nice and labailam revia. Avol nice and labailam revia. He still has to give 1/4 to the original owner. Meaning that it's not like gamri away. Meaning even though it's foreclosed and the bank is really selling it, but we still want to give the bailam epis chus. It's still not. Again, we're not talking about
I'm still going to get it back at Yovel anyway.
Right, but
I'm saying, so it's
right. It's not like it was hefker. It's not like he got rid of it. But over here, we're not dealing with a normal circumstance, or we're not dealing with a normal kind of sale. So because it's a very not typical situation, so we still want to give the schus. Meaning, what's happening in these 12 months? Is it possible for them to go back to their land? I don't know, right? You know what happens when all these wars happen? Is sometimes it's more than a year that you can't go back to the land. So you try to buy it back, and it's not shaykh. He can't. You know, they bombed out the cities around him, and it wasn't shaykh for him to get back to the property. So we still have to hold on to the mashu. Okay. So Zakti Gemara as follows: Hashta baruge mulchama lehayu basekrikin me'aruge mulchama ve'elach yesh basekrikin. Now, if during the period in which the people were being killed as a result of the mulchama, so that then you were saying that there's no sikrikin, but meharuga mulchama ve'elach. But after the war, you're telling me that there is sikrikin. Why is it after the war? L'char should be fakar. L'char, this should be happening during the war. So Amar Yehuda, meaning when are people acting out so viciously in a way that they're running people out of their land and they're demanding it? If you don't give me the land, we're going to kill you. Like that's a very wartime thing when all these people are these guerrilla tactics that they're using to get the people out of the land. So Amar Yehuda doesn't mean that the actual Sikrikin are killing people or not killing people, but it means like Donuba that didn't Sikrikin come. Yehuda says that it means that the laws of Sikrikin was not applied during the war. And why not? And it is interesting because this is what the Mishnah is talking about. The Amar Ravasi, and Ravasi said, Gimel Gzeres Gazu. Titus and his officers who led this war made 3 Gzeres. The first 2 were issued during the war, and the last one was after the war. Gzerosa Kamaisa, the first Gzera was, Kadal Kadal Liktalu. Whoever doesn't kill a Jew whenever he has the opportunity to do so, shall be executed. Okay? Mitziasa, the second one was, Kadal Kadal Leisi Arbazuzi. Whoever kills a Jew must pay a penalty of 4 zuz. Why did he got to pay a penalty for killing the Jew? It was a very small amount of money. So he was, at one point he tried to get them to stop. So what was the incentive to stop? I'll pay you 50 cents. So it's more or less a joke. It can't be taken too seriously. Over here they bring the Taisus Rid. The second Gzera was that whoever kills a Jew is rewarded with 4 zuz. Okay? That would make more sense if you'd patches of the Gzera. Yeah. Basraisa, the last Gzera was called the Katalik Telu. Whoever kills a Jew shall be killed. Meaning that it was against the law to kill a Jew then. So Hilka Kamaisum and Siyasa, the first and second Gzeras were in effect during the war. Kevan the Katli, since the Goyim would kill the Jews without the fear of any kind of consequence or punishment, Agav Oin say Gomer Makni. A Jewish landowner whose life was threatened by Sikrikin would, as a result of the pressure, would sincerely transfer the ownership of his land to the Sikrikin. So therefore, the Sikrikin definitely assumes the ownership of the land, because Talu of Vizav is a Gemara Baba Basra, and in Baba Kama, Talu of Vizav is Zvini. It's a serious sale, and it's not because he's. So under such circumstances, the laws of Sikrikin are not applicable because we're dealing with regular din of Talu of Vizav. Basraisa Kalmar. Basraisa Amri, but the last Gzera, which was after the war, when the Jews were being protected, so then they said, let's take the land today, and tomorrow I'll claim it from him in court. The owner doesn't necessarily give it to the Sikrikin because maybe he's going to get it back. After he's going to get it back. Okay. Now we could get to, here, you can use this one, I'll get back to my Gemara. We finished the Gemara that I needed it for, so... Yeah. Okay, so here's the Tisha B'Av Gemara, as we call it. We had in Gemaras over the years, there was a Yid Ramosha Hamnik who would start speaking after Marav on Tisha B'Av. He usually start with the Yerushalmi and Tainus, and he would go through Yerushalmi and Tainus. It would be for an hour and a half, and then the next morning, Tisha B'Av morning, from after Kinnis till the fast was over, he would go through this entire Gemara. Some years he would finish it, some years he wouldn't. On the years that he would finish it, he'd go into Gemaras and Sanhedrin and go to Medrash Eicha, and he would go on and on and on. He was doing it in his mid-80s. He was nifter and covered, but I sat there many years. I sat there, and my father sat there, and then I found that my grandfather even sat through him for quite a while. So this is the Gemara. I mean, it is the 3 weeks. It is a little apropos for the Zman, but yes, let's start. Zamar B'Yechon, the Gemara introduces this sugya with the following memory. What's the pasuk of Ashrei Odam Mefachad Tamid the Maksha Liba Yipal Bara? That praiseworthy is a person who's constantly in fear, and a person who hardens his heart, he's going to get Yipal Bara. He'll have misfortune happen to him. Zok Rashi, Mefachad, he's doyeg liris hanoilad. He's worried about what could happen. Shalei tarat hakol b'kachem esses. I mean, he's concerned about the consequences of his actions. So Tosfos brings a ma'aseh because the Gemara Bracha says that he saw somebody chazilo gavra davam mefachad. He saw somebody that looked very nervous. He said, "Om lechatat." He says, "You're sinning." So why are you sinning if you're nervous? T'chsev pachad u'b'tzin chatam. Says that obviously it's you're only nervous because you sinned. And the Gemara asks from the pasuk of Ashrei Odam Mefachad Tamid that seemingly it's praiseworthy that a person should. So over there the Gemara answers that it's ahuba divrei Torah. That person should constantly chazer over his learning, so he shouldn't forget it, because it's neichel abed kikleis chuchis, like the Gemara says. It's a person's learning can easily be forgotten, so you have to make sure that doesn't happen. So here we're saying that what happened was just a little bit of a background to what was going on at the time. They were batchu al roiv toivasam v'shalvasam. They were very happy and content with life, and then when things started getting out of hand, when they were misbehaving, and then when all kinds of bad things started happening to them, they're like, well, what's happening? What do you mean what's happening? If you follow Shulchan Aruch the way you're supposed to, then the bad things wouldn't have happened, right? So let's see, the Gemara is going to introduce the three stories and then go through each story separately. Kamsa, Bar Kamsa, Chorv Yerushalayim. Kamsa and Bar Kamsa were the cause of why Yerushalayim got destroyed. And a Tarnagol of a Tarnagol to Chorv Tormalka. And a male and a female chicken was the cause of destruction for Har HaMelech, Tormalka. Asaka de Risbak Chorv Beitar. And because of the side of a chariot, the Beitar was destroyed. So Zokrashi Saka de Risbak is David Shal Makeves Nashim. And the side of a woman's carriage was a certain kind of wagon that broke, and because of that, Beitar got destroyed. So what's the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa? So Akamsa Bar Kamsa Chorv Yerushalayim. Dahu Gaber the Rachmei Kamsa, Balduvav the Bar Kamsa. So there were two fellows. There was Bar Kamsa and Kamsa. And there was a guy who was friendly with Kamsa, and he was the enemy. Balduvav means he did not get along with him. He was the enemy of Bar Kamsa. So the Maharsha says that this is Sinas Chino. And this is what we try very hard that we shouldn't do. Yeah? So, and we know the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinas Chino, and that was the first Beis HaMikdash. The second Beis HaMikdash, we had that, unfortunately, as well. So what happened was like this. Ovad Sudasa. So this fellow, this Ahu Gavra, who we don't know who he is, I don't think we know who it is, he made a party. Omar Leila Shames, he tells his servant, Zil Aisili Kamsa, go bring me Kamsa. A formal invitation to Kamsa. Ozil Aisile Bar Kamsa. He didn't hear, or he didn't know, or he wasn't so smart, or we don't know why he did this, but he went and he brought the wrong guy. Bar Kamsa. So the enemy. So also Ashri Davi Yosef, and he sees that he's sitting there. Omalei Mechdi Ahu Gavra Baldavava Dahu Gavrahu. This is the enemy. This is not the friend. This is not the guy that's supposed to be by the party. So my Barzacha, what are you doing here? So Kumpuk, get out of here. Omalei Hoil Vasoy Shavkan Vihivna Lucht Memadachil Mishasina. He said, listen, I'm already by the party. He said, let me stay. I'll pay for the food. I'll pay for my plate. Whatever I'm going to eat, whatever I'm going to drink, I'm going to pay. He said nothing to it. I'm going to pay for half the suda. He said nothing doing. I'll pay for the entire thing. He says nothing doing. So Nakte Biyode, he grabbed him by the hand, he picked him up, and he threw him out. And here's what went bad. It's not necessarily so much obviously it's a taina on him that he was treating him this way, and so very disrespectfully, and he didn't do anything. We don't know what he did wrong with him. The Gemara just says that they didn't get along. Now, to start remembering why people don't get along with other people, you forget about it. It's not negaya. So Omar Sabakamta said, this was the terrible part of the story. He said the Rabbanan were sitting by this party. They saw everything that transpired. and nobody was able to stand up against this. It sounds like he's not even coming with a personal taina. He's like, you saw somebody doing something wrong, and you're the rabban, and you should call it out. You should stick up for what was going wrong. So Shema Mina Kaneichel Lahu, they didn't mind what happened, right? So Ezel Echel Be Kurza Be Malchus, he went entitled to the king. Kurza is Leisei Lechrachel Ba'amecha. The Targum says Leiseichel Meichel Kurzen. And the Rishonim there explain that there was a certain type of food that was served by certain kinds of, big king's parties. When there was a certain matzav, or a certain like Yishmaka part, and everybody would say their gossip and lashon hara. So they would eat this kind of food apparently. This kurza be malka. And Haman, the Gemara says that the last man the other lishna bisha kahaman, and he was the barber in Kfar Kartzum for 22 years. So that's also what that has to do with the lashon hara and the sinas chinam aspect of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So Ozal Amalei Lekesam Mardu Bach Yudois. He goes and he tells the king that the Jews are rebelling against you. Amalei Miyema. He said, who says? Amalei Shadlu Korbana. He says, go send a carbon. Chazesi Makrivin Le. So go see if they're going to be Makriv the carbon. So Ozal Shadlu Biyodei Agla Tilsa. So he sent a very well-fed Gezunta calf to be bred as a carbon in Yerushalayim.
Agla Tilsa is usually the third calf.
Yeah, so Tosfos says that it's not.
It's not in this case. Or in just
I think in general.
In general.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Tosfos says it. Yeah, it's good. Good point. Yeah, look at Tosfos over here. It says, "Kamay b'shalishim al kulay, kamay eglam mishuleshes, v'ayil mishulash pirish bari v'toiv, v'yesh mefarshim shlishi labeten, v'lo yitachin." It's not the pshat. The Amrinim beparak Abba Mises in Sanhedrin to have a marvel igla tilsa. They would create an igla tilsa from the Sefer Yetzirah, so it couldn't be the shlishi labeten because there was no beten and there was no shlishi, there was no nothing over there. Right? Okay. So, Bahadi the Ka'asi showed the Beimuma. So while he was sending it to the Beis Hamikdash, he placed the mum on the animal. Yeah? Beniv Svasayim, on the lips. It was like a small little boo-boo, like nothing too bad. Yeah? Ve'amri la b'daikin shaba'ayin, or something in the eye. There's a question, how exactly, daikin shaba'ayin is a cataract issue. So how could you make a cataract issue? So as I affect the Rashba in Shuvas writes about this. Marzchis brings it. So it means that it could be that he knew how to. It could be he knew how to, make it get a boo boo to get a cataract, or it means that or there's a gears over here, beris shaba'ayin, in the eyelid. So that would be something else. So duchta del dan have a muma v'lidhu lav mumahu. That for a yid it would be a mum, but for a guy it wouldn't be a mum, because for a guy who's makriv a carbon on a bama, he can only, as long as it's not missing a limb, you could be makriv on a bum. So, what?
For their idolatry, not for a carbon.
I mean, yeah. And I mean, before let's say when Noach was makriv on a bum on a mizbeach, or that was halacha then too. It's a sugi and zvachim at the end of zvachim. It's interesting story over there. So Savar Rabban Lekruva Mishum Shlem Alchus. So the Rabbanon figured that the right thing to do, they didn't want to upset the king, so they'll be makriv on the mizbeach. Amalu, he said, Amalu Reb Chayben of Kula. So Chayben of Kula said to them, Yomer Balamum and Krevin Lagabe mizbeach. So they're going to say, the goyim are going to say that you're being makriv, you don't take your halacha seriously because you're makriv balamum on the mizbeach. So Savar Lamigdalei, the leleis of a lema. So they wanted to kill him, said he shouldn't be able to say anything to the king. So Amalahura Chayben of Kula says, Chayben of Kula said to them, Yomer Matalum B'Kachim Yehari. But then the word is going to get out that somebody puts a mum on the kachim is going to get killed, because this guy got killed because he's putting a mum on the carbon. So Amr Rabbi Yechonah says a very powerful line. And Vasnusa Shalom Zechayben of Kulas, the humility of Zechayben of Kulas, Hechrivas Beisenu, destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, Vesarvas Hechalenu, and got the Hechal burnt Glisanu Me'artzenu, and got the and put us all into Galus. Why? Because he was nice. And he should have killed him. And Mr. Trump talks about this, that, everybody thinks that the pshat is that if I'm a soft guy, I'm always going to be an honor, right? You see a guy doing something that shouldn't be. These rabbis that were sitting by that Suda, they were also praving anivas, the wrong type of anivas. Because it would be up to, if they were doing the right kind of thing, they would stick up for themselves. You know, it's interesting. Pinchas killed Zimri, right? Zimri was Gadol Hador. It's not a question. You know, to start talking.
You have to have 100%. You can't have 99%. You know, for Hashem, it has to be 100%. Is anything in you that?
So I mean, I'm not so familiar with the way everybody everybody describes how Pinchas, got up in anger, and Pinchas was a hot-headed guy to begin with. It's not mistaver. Pinchas saw something that was shaloi halacha, and he acted halachically. He didn't go hot-headed because generally, if you're hot-headed, you don't get the halacha, right? I mean, there's 10,000 mahalchim, at least. But over here, what happened was he shouldn't have been civil this, and he should have stood up. He should have put his foot down a little stronger to make more of a statement about what would be going on over here. Now, obviously, the Gemara is saying, obviously, Rabbi Yochanan is saying that, so that's the truth of the matter. So now here's where we get to the next part of the story. Shadar Ilayu Lenirin Kesar. So then they sent this message to Nirin Kesar. Kikaasi, so he came to fight against the Jews in Yerushalayim. Shadar Girul Mizrach. He wanted to know, he wanted to do a test with a shtickle, Rashi says, to be Kaisim Ksamim, which is a certain kind of kishuf, to know should he start up with the Jews or not. So he shot some arrows to the east, also Nafal Yerushalayim. He shot arrows eastward and they landed in Yerushalayim. Lamariv, he shot the arrows westward, also Nafal Yerushalayim. La'abaruchas Hashemayim, he shot the arrows in all the different directions, also Nafal Yerushalayim. Every arrow that he shot ended up in Yerushalayim. So he took that as a sign that he's going to have Hatzlacha to go fight against Yerushalayim. So he went over to the Yanuka, to a child. The Gemara says in Bava Basra that a child has a Zaman Ruach HaKodesh. Right? We're familiar with this from the Purim story. Utzvei Sufa, right? It's on the Purim tape. What did you learn in school today? Right? What did you learn? And each one said a pasuk, and whatever that pasuk is, that would be the message. So he says, Omar Lei, he said the pasuk was V'nasati es nekmasi be'edom biyad ami Yisrael. He says, I'm going to put my nakam on Edom through the Jewish people. Al yidei ami Yisrael. Omar, he says, Kuchabrichu baruch ruve beisei baruch bur yodei ba'u gavra. He says, the Kodesh Baruch Hu wants to have his Beis HaMikdash destroyed, and he wants to use me as the one who he can use to do it. So it's interesting, lashon over here, baruch pure yodei, is lashon of kapara. Not that he's going to get a kapara for destroying the Beis HaMikdash, but it means like Rashi l'kaneach yadav, to be the one to get his hands dirty with it, and Hashem is kilu has to clean his hands off from putting him into this position. So he got very nervous, and he didn't want to. He was a very mighty and powerful person, but he got very nervous. So he ran away. V'ozal v'igayer v'nafak minei Reb Meir, and he ran away, and he became a ger, and Reb Meir came out of his descendants. If you want to understand this story, so the Kaveh Yashar, believe it's the last parak, which is parak Kuf Beis, parak 102 at the end. He talks about Tainus Esther, and he talks about Poland, then he talks about Gog and Magog. I believe he lived at the time Kufav Tachvitat, with the 1680s, right? And he goes a whole Torah and a whole Arichas about what what's this whole ma'aseh that he originally wanted to, then he got scared and then he ran away. And Vusapis Reb Meir, it's a very cryptic Gemara. He explains it very, very nice over there. Okay. Next step of the story was Shadrei Luyei La Aspasionos Kesar. So you go to Aspasionos, who he's going to be a little more involved. Also, Tzara Leo Tla Shoni. He laid a siege against Yerushalayim for 3 years. Hava Bahanu Tlasa Asiri. There were 3 very wealthy people that lived in Yerushalayim at the time they weren't just the wealthy people, they were people who had a big say in the community affairs, and they were able to help the Yidden as much as they were able to. So there were Nakdim ben Gurion, ben Kalba Savua, ben Tzitzis Haksas. Nakdim ben Gurion, Shenak Lechama Bavurai. He's the one that he held up the sun with the story with the Roman governor, with the Alila Regel, with the water, with the whole Maisa and the Gemara Tainus, Ayin Sham. A Gavaldic story. And Ben Kalba Savua was called such because Shekala Nichnas Lebezek Shu Rov Kekelev, Yezek Shu Saveya. His house, he had tons of food going on in his house, and you could come in and starving and hungry as a dog, and you would walk out and you'd be full and satiated, and you wouldn't feel like a dog anymore. Ben Tzitzis Haksas, why was he called that? Shahaisa Tzitzisa Negreris Lagabe Xosas, because he was wearing a lot of tzitzis. The tzitzis of his talus was a very long beggar, a very long tzitzis, and they were schlep behind him, but he would walk with a lot of fancy other clothing that would be draped on behind him. People would carry it behind him. And others learned that the pshat is that he was an important chairman by the Romans. So one of these people said, we'll supply, during this siege, he said, we'll supply Yerushalayim, I'll supply Yerushalayim with wheat and barley. Other one said, I have wine and salt, umishcha and oil. Another one said, I have wood. And the Rabbanon praised the one who said that he had wood. The Rav Chisda kol haklidi abamazar l'shamei bar medetzivi. Rav Chisda, as Gemara goes off a shtickle to talk about this memory from Rav Chisda, the question is why, but Rav Chisda would give the key to his shamish for any kind of anything in the storage house besides for the wood. Why? The Rav Chisda achla b'dechiti b'yishitin achla b'detzivi. The key for the chitim needs 60 keys for the wood, meaning that the wood is so much more important than the actual food, because I guess you can
make things.
You could build things, and and there's probably more uses for it than just
more along the lines of cooking.
What?
More along the lines of cooking.
Yeah.
Now it says over here, store. You have to do something to store.
Okay.
You have to protect the weight.
Okay.
Yeah, for protection. That would be like construction. That would be very, like you said. Yeah.
All right.
So there was enough food there and enough wood there to keep Yerushalayim going for the next 21 years. Obviously, we're talking about the Khurban here. It's as much good as you're going to have. It's not going to last for too long, and we'll soon see what. There were these Bar Yonim are people that are Anashim Reikim Upechzim L'Mulchama. They're empty people, and they're always rushing for war. They're trying to make a ruckus wherever they go. The problem was that there was an internal political situation between the Bar Yonim and the Chachmei Yisrael, and they wanted that the Chachmei Yisrael should be machnia to the Romans, because then the Romans will stop bothering the Jews, and then they can make peace. I mean, why do you have to stand up against the Romans? So Havabu Hanu Bar Yoni Amalu Rabbana Nepuk V'Navet Shalma Badayu. Why don't you go and make peace with them? Lo Yishavkin. But we don't want to do that. Amrulu said to them, Nepuk V'Navet Karba Badayu. Why don't you go make a war with them? I mean, it was like a stalemate, because they lay siege and there was nothing happening. So Amalu Rabbanu Lemestaya Milsa. It's not going to help. I mean, there's no chance. Rabbanu said there's no chance we're not going to be able to win against them. This sounds a little bit like Yush, right? This doesn't sound so. This is not Bar Kochel. This is not. Oh, we're going to go and we're going to fight them. Mamish not. There's no. Almost like there's no hope. So Kamu Kalinu Lahanu Ambri Dechiti Visari, Vahava Kafna. So they burnt down all the storage houses of the wheat and the barley, and there was a famine. So these Bar Yonim, they did a terrible thing. You want to side with the Romans, and you have maybe a good reason, Efshaya, Efshanish. But here they had supplies for Yerushalayim for the whole population. What do you have against the people in Yerushalayim? But they were against the Chacham. And the Chacham said no. And they had their own agendas. They were fighting with the Chacham. So to get the Chacham back, they wanted to put everybody in more despair for their agenda. And so then people say, oh, look, we have to side with them. We have no choice but to side with the Bar Yonim, meaning to side with the Romans. Now the Gemara goes into another story of Marta Bas Baisus. Asirta Yerushalayim Hav Yeshu, the wealthy woman in Yerushalayim, maybe the wealthiest even. Shadusah l'shlucha v'amrullah v'amrullah zil aisli smida. she sent her messenger to go to the marketplace to buy silas, to buy flour for her. Ad ozal is dabin. By the time he got to the silas was already sold. Osamala smida leka. There's regular white flour. There's no more silas. So Amrullah is the Laisili. So go buy that for me. Ad ozal is dabin. By the time he got there, it was sold already. Also, there's no more white flour gushkarika. This is the brand flour, the whole wheat stuff. The stuff that the farmers eat, the real coarse flour. Amar Lei says, Zil Isili, go buy that for me. By the time he got there, it was already sold. Also, there's only barley flour left. Go buy that. I mean, this is how desperate they were. First of all, you see how quick the things were moving. And you see how desperate that even the wealthiest woman in Yerushalayim is willing to eat something which you would never even call him to eat in her life. So Adazal is daven. Have her shlifa mesana. She took off her shoes and she was walking in the Amra Epak ve'echzi in Mishkach Numidi Lameichel. She said, she was so hungry, she was so desperate for food that she took off her shoes and she decided to walk in the street and maybe she could find some scraps on the floor. It's a terrible situation. We're talking about the wealthiest person in Yerushalayim. He thanked the Bar Yonim for destroying everything. So Esav law parta bekara umesa. So she stepped on something disgusting, some glowing behema, and she died because she was so. First of all, she was probably weak because of the famine. That's number one. And number two, she was so sensitive to anything, and she was walking in the street without her shoes on, and that's already something that shows a sign of desperation. It's a simon of avelus. And we don't wear shoes on Tisha B'Av. And she's looking and she steps on something and she dies. Kara le Rabbi Yochanan Mezaka said about this haraka bach v'hanuga asher le'nisasa kaf ragla, that the soft one and the anuga, the one that has all the tanugim, she couldn't put her foot down. It's a pasuk in the Teichicha that says this. And Rabbi Yochanan Mezaka said this in reference to her because she was such a chashuv woman. And she was so sensitive, and she was so all the tanugim that anybody could think of. But when the famine came, when there was no food left, and there was nothing there for her, and she stepped on something, and she died. Ika the Amri, there's another that Gregor's Tzadik Ochla V'Isnisa Umesa, or maybe she ate a fig from Rabbi Yochanan. From Rabbi Tzadik, and she got so disgusted by it that she died. The Rabbi Tzadik Yosef Arbon Shanan B'Tanisa. Reb Tzadok fasted for 40 years. The Leilach of Yerushalayim, the Yerushalayim should not get destroyed. That is going to be a Chorban. There was a lot of undercurrent of not goodness going on at that time, and Reb Tzadok picked up on it, and he made avodah to try to protect Yerushalayim from getting destroyed. So if you have a achal midi, meaning every now and then you would have to eat something, have a meschazi me'avra. You were able to see the food going down his digestive tract. That's how thin he was. B'chiyava bari, and when he was up to it, if he had enough koyach, ma'isi like gregors, they would give him one fig, ma'itz ma'hu v'shadilahu. He would suck out the juice and throw out the fig. Yeah. Kava kanecha nafsha. So that's what she stepped. That's what she ate. She ate a fig that was already eaten by somebody. When during the war, Rav Gustman was running away when he was in the woods. I think it was before he joined the partisans. His wife was mamish dying from starvation, and somehow he managed to procure like a small bite of a carrot, and he had to eat something also. So he put it in his mouth and he chewed on it, and ate some of it, and then the rest of it he dropped into his wife's mouth, just to give a dugma of. This wasn't so long ago, with this. That was also a Chorban. So, Kinecha Nafsha, as she was dying, Afikta Lechol Dav of a Kaspa. She took off all her jewelry, and she took out all her gold and silver, Shadise Beshuka, and she threw it onto the streets. Amra, she says, Hi Lamai Mi Boy, what do I need this for? Everything's there's no point anymore. There's no one to give it to. There's no one that could appreciate it. The silver, the money, they're going to throw it into the streets because there's no, and it's very interesting because Latzara Toiv, by Shlomo HaMelech, it says that the diamonds and the gold are also in the streets. So you have to, it's a similar thing, just the exact opposite. Okay. Who is the leader of the Bar Yonim? Zok the Gemara. Abba Sikra Reish Bayarni Yerushalayim. Abba Sikra, that was his name. I never. The Chut has Sikra on the Mizbeach, and the Sikra B'Sikra by the Maisa Behema. It means a red stripe.
Right.
Does that mean that he wore a red suit or something, or maybe he was like a red stripe because he stood out? He probably says something. I don't know. I never saw anything about this. If anybody knows, please enlighten us. So he was the Reish Bayarni Yerushalayim. He was the leader. He was the chief gangster. And again, he was leading the Anashim Reikim of Parksam L'Mulchama. He was the leader of these people. But who was he? He was Bar Achdei Rabbi Yochanan Mezaka. Rabbi Yochanan Mezaka was the leader of the Jewish people. Says something?
It was an Aramaic form of the word sikaris, or murderer.
Red.
Yeah.
Blood.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. See, he's the chief. He's the head honcho. He's the Reish Anashim Reikim of Parksam L'Mulchama.
Yep.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, good. So Rabbi Yochanan Mezaka was the leader of the Jewish people at this difficult time, and his nephew was Abba Sikra. It was a family struggle, maybe also. I mean, I don't know that, but so Habashalach lay Tabit Tzina L'Gaboy. Come and meet with me. Amalei ad emas avdisu hachi v'katlisu leila alma b'kafna. He says, how long are you going to do this to us? That you're killing everybody out with this hunger. The hunger came about not because of the Romans. The Romans didn't do anything. The Romans didn't touch the food sources. The Bar Yonim did it. They were Jewish people. What do you do that for? So Amalei ma yavet. He said, what should I have done? If he put himself in a very vulnerable situation. He said, I'm the leader. And technically everybody's scared of me. But if I would say not to do that, they would gang up against me and they would kill me. Realize, these people they have a real agenda to go against everything that makes sense and what the Chacham are going to say. Maybe we could try to work something out. Maybe we could work something out to have some kind of atzalah, to have some kind of something. Maybe we can try to go out of the city with some kind of political connections to go outside the city to be able to meet with the Romans, to be able to make peace. Make yourself sick. Everyone's going to come in back, and we have about 10 seconds left. And then you'll take a rotten piece of meat and put it next to you, and then it'll smell like you died. So then, and they'll say that you died. And your Talmidim will come take care of you, and you're not going to allow anybody else to come in. All right, I think we'll stop here, and to be continuing with Shem tomorrow. But this is the story of Rebbe Bazaka and Abba Sikra. Yeah, we should be zeicha to only Simchas and Yeshua and Nechamas.
Amen.